I need some traction.
Hey, Traction fam. Our guest today is Ragy Thomas, the CEO and founder of Sprinklr, an enterprise software company. He founded in 2009 in his spare bedroom and grew it to be a public company in June of 21. Sprinklr provides customer experience management software to some of the largest brands on the planet, like Microsoft and McDonald's. And today, Sprinklr helps global brands manage customer service, research marketing, and social media engagement on digital channels. I'm super excited to get into Ragy's story on how, starting from his spare bedroom, he grew this company to being now a multi-billion-dollar public company. Welcome to Traction, Ragy. How you doing?
Fantastic. God is kind. Things are good. The things that aren't good are getting better.
Everything eventually gets better. Pain is the precondition for growth. Give us a brief overview of your background and what led you to co-found Sprinklr. What was that inspiration?
Well, I did 3 companies before this, and they were primarily in the email marketing space. So I had the privilege of watching the world transition from direct mail to email as a communications channel. I saw consumers start using AOL and Hotmail, and we built 3 businesses that helped large companies use email as a channel. And we sold that in 2005, and I ran that division for a couple of years, and I realized just didn't enjoy being a big company guy. And I saw the same opportunity in social media to build a platform for large businesses to use all social channels to communicate, to reach, to engage, and to listen to customers across all of these channels. And that was the origin of Sprinklr.
And what was your background like? You did 3 startups. It's hard enough to land on one successful startup and getting that motivation to keep going. So how did you get your start in entrepreneurship? And I'm curious to know, after doing 3 startups, the last one you sold in 2005, why do it again?
There is no entrepreneurship in my family, period. I mean, my dad is a retired professor, and my entire family is professors or doctors or engineers or whatever. And add to that, we tend to, at least growing up, people would look down on people who do business. It was like, and so there's I did my undergrad in computer science engineering. In what I'm pretty sure was a recruiting mistake, got hired into a company that sent me here to the US to come work. And during the .com time, I ended up working for a .com startup that was going to go belly up. And then we spun our first startup out of it. And so I'm kind of an accidental entrepreneur, if you will. And I'm one of those guys who's just afraid to fail and believe in seeing things through. So, stuff tend to work out.
I come from a Southern Indian background, and entrepreneurship and business is frowned upon. And I think for 10 years, my mom had no clue what I was doing until we exited the company. And she's like, oh, okay, that's what you do. Because for the longest time, it was, your wife's a doctor. Don't you have any shame? You're like letting her run the family while you do the startup after startup that fails. Why don't you get a job somewhere? So I can completely empathize. But then you had an exit in 2005. What was this innate motivation to say, like, now let's do another one? It might be the problem, but it might be, you're just a sucker for punishment, because a lot of founders, then they go into venture capital or they do other things.
So my previous ones, was always multiple people. And when there are multiple people involved in building something, you just really never sure who did what. And so I wanted to do something that was an idea I had, a vision I had, and I wanted to see that through. Look, I think I learned by then that the destination for all of us is a very unfortunate place, So you really have to enjoy the journey. And I've truly and deeply understood that what I enjoy doing is taking on big problems and trying to solve it with people I love being with and smart people who are kind and caring. And that process, the journey is the reward. And so that's what it is. That turns me on. I wake up every morning and we're on a very big problem that I think the world needs to solve with the front office. And so it's a privilege to be doing that.
How did you uncover that problem? What was the vision in the early days, and how has that evolved to today?
So remember, my email companies were solving the problem of reaching customers via email. And so we were sending out billions of emails, all permission based. So banks would use my platform to send out personalized notifications. Media companies would send out breaking news alerts and all of that. And with social media, I realized there were all these new channels that were proliferating, and companies needed a way to reach, engage, and listen to customers. So we built all of those capabilities: planning, publishing, governance, listening, engaging, response, case management, analytics. But we built it in a way that was very modular as a platform because of my previous experiences. And we built a unified communications engine that you could just plug any channel into. So when I got started, I'm like, I'm going to do another quick one. It's going to be fun. I'm going to just not have too many people. So it'll be different from before. But 2 years into it, I realized we had built an omni-channel communications infrastructure that was very valuable. And so we took it from social. I love to, in my arrogant moments, I like to think we created that category, social media management. But we realized that wasn't the category. So we took that social, we added on digital capabilities, and very soon realized that, look, we had social customer service and we had enhanced it to do digital customer service. And then quickly realized that the contact center was completely broken. So we added voice and evolved that into a full-blown omni-channel contact center solution. We took our social listening, added AI to it, and quickly realized that it was location insights, brand insights, competitive insights, and now that's evolving to be a full-blown voice of the customer product suite. We took our marketing, which originally was social publishing and social advertising, added content marketing, now, work management capabilities and marketing automation, and that's becoming a marketing stack. And then we're adding a sales stack, and then we obviously have our social product suite. So what we're doing is each one of our product suites playing into a mainstream category, a replacement market. And together, think about your contact center being aware of what's going on in the marketing world, and your marketing team knowing what's going on in the sales world, and all of them being able to work together while they feel like they're independent, come together for the customer. And that's the experience you get when you walk into a store. If you might walk in and say, hey, my phone's slow, and they'll look at it and say, maybe you should get an iPhone 14 and I have a deal. And all of that happens. It's marketing and sales. Now that's what the vision is. And what we realized that the CRM platforms, which are 20, 30 years old, maybe 40 years old, they're not built to support the salesperson. They're not built to support the marketing person. They're not built to support the agent. They were built as a system of record. So, the CFO can count the money and the supervisors can measure what's going on. And so what we're doing is creating an operating system for the edge of the brand. And I think it'll complement the CRM platforms that they have. And today we are, for many of our customers, and we work with all 10 of the 10 biggest customers, about 8 brands in the world, 80 of the top 100, 13 of the 14 largest banks, and most large companies at this point. And we're becoming that third platform. They buy Salesforce, they buy Microsoft, and they buy Adobe maybe, and then you got Sprinklr. So we're becoming the third or fourth platform in the front office, but with a single instance deployment architecture, so we can unify the brands that the company might have, unify the markets that the brand might have, unify customer-facing teams that operate within the market, and then unify across channels for that function. Does it make sense?
That's attempted to build a data-driven AI sales assistant in 2015 that failed miserably after burning through a lot of cash. But I play along with all kinds of marketing and sales too. What I've come to realize is a lot of the CRMs, they exist because nobody got fired for hiring IBM, but all they are is, glorify system of record is as a way to say glorified database, right?
Yeah, I don't want to diss them, but remember, they're built on a relational database architecture and is built to store relational data. Whereas in the front office, almost always is unstructured data and it's conversations. So unless you're truly AI first, and I know everyone talks about AI now, which just freaks me out. But 5 years ago, if you read our IPO prospectus, there's 7 pages of how everything in Sprinklr is built on AI. And so that requires a very different architecture and backend. And we literally pull in every bit of legally available external data from all channels, Twitter, Reddit, blogs, forums, ratings, reviews, everything. And we run, what is now 9 layers of AI, or 7, 8, now 9 layers of AI to understand intent, understand over 100 languages, piece things together. And with generative AI, we're able to take it to another level.
Definitely. And you're effectively the operating system for the front end of the company, meaning everything customer facing. So when you say omni-channel, you got social there, you got voice, you also have email or?
Totally. So at this point, we support practically any channel you can imagine. So in the contact center, it's every social channel you can think of that has an API. And right now, because we're the biggest, we're a tier 1 partner for all the channels that are out there, social networks and others. And then we've got messaging, voice, email, pretty much truly omni-channel. And the funny thing is, because the communication interface is so mature, you can add a new channel in 2 weeks. So let's say you want to publish to your Samsung and you want to publish to your TV, or you want to publish to a display because you're in an airport. We can publish to anything. We'll just give you a set of APIs. If you code to it, the next new social channel will have Sprinklr completely working for it end to end in 2 weeks.
You got the structured data probably coming from the World Wide Web, and then you got both structured and unstructured data coming from all these channels. And now applying generative AI to it, you can 10x the customer experience. So let's dive in there because, everyone is an AI expert, and everyone's with generative AI. There's professions like prompt engineer coming on board, but you guys have been doing this for a while, and you recently launched an offering called AI Plus, which incorporates generative AI across all your products. How will generative AI change the customer experience management space?
Well, let's dive into it. First off, for the last 5 years, what we've done is developed hundreds, if not thousands, of models of understanding languages, understanding marketing and customer service, understanding industries, and lots of models that are custom created for customers, specific customer in an industry. And we do that in over 100 languages. We have over 10 million training data points. We have hundreds of engineers who've been annotating. And AI is not about like the model. The model is made by, companies like Google and Facebook, and in some cases us. But it's how do you train those models, annotate them, and then create feedback loops so that the models get better. And so you have 1 million, data points that you're training on, or 10 million, or 100 million. That's where the difference is. So we've had hundreds of features that's on AI. Pretty much most things we do has some AI in it. With generative AI, we're able to take things that were more in the background and bring it to the foreground in a way that a user can appreciate it more. So in the contact center, we got smart routing, which is an AI-based feature. I'll give you an example of smart response. So if you call an agent and we suggest a response, in the past, we would suggest a cryptic response. Hey, this might be the solution to this problem based on the 1,000 cases that we parse through on the back end. But with generative AI, we can take the prompt and convert it into a full script. Now, imagine you're a contact center agent and you're handling call after call, and you're going through a lot of things on the screen. So the smart response was a useful feature, but when we gave them a script and they could just read it off, the cognitive load came down. And so we saw the adoption of this go up like over 300%. On the outbound side, look, we would always make content suggestions, but now we can generate an image. We can give you copies. So especially in the digital world, you can't make enough versions. And that used to be a very time-consuming effort and expensive thing to do. Now you can go create 10,000 versions and have generative AI create them, and the system test it out with smart bidding and just auto-optimize it. So that's how a lot of the things that were happening in the background now become very palpably and perceivably exciting for an advertising manager or a contact center agent. And so we think, I like to say that, generative AI gave our AI wings.
Definitely. And, it's one thing to make a suggestion on do this, but the other thing is just give it to them, like just do it for them. Yeah. Years ago, I think 2013, I was working with a couple of engineers on this product that was a chatbot built on top of Zendesk, which would use case-based reasoning to look at historical data and suggest answers. And when we did Turing tests on Twitter and everything else, we could get to 90% accuracy. But the issue was when we launched on Zendesk, they had very small customers, so there wasn't data, and people would be like, "This is spitting gibberish, make it stop." And then we gave up and move on to other projects. But my dream was one day somebody will take it to a level where the customer experience is so seamless. Like every time you hop on a call with a bank or a phone company, you're on an infinite loop, and the next person doesn't know what the previous person said. Just simplify it for the customer and provide a great experience. And this is a fantastic way to do it. And then everything about the customer. They don't get bounced around. The job is done for them. Customers want an outcome. They don't want software. And we're in an age where you can actually deliver the outcome. Speaking of the customer, it seems like you've gone on this journey through a lot of listening and talking and understanding to your customers, or else it's hard to build something sustainable. Everything you've said thus far is doing something to improve the customer experience. How did you get started with your customer journey? How did you get your first few customers starting out of your spare bedroom there?
Live and die by first principles. And so when I got started with Sprinklr, I literally tracked down people who were doing social media, and I chased them down and with a simple question of what are the top issues you're having when you're trying to use these channels for business. And that's it. And, people who were kind enough to give me all the input, I would collate it. And then I would send them a link to the platform and say, can you try it out and see whether you'll love it? And tell me what else you need. And that's how we landed, Dell and Virgin America and Cisco, like all our early customers. And it was just completely product-based. And I like to look, I think life is too short to deal with unpleasantness. So I want to try and make Sprinklr the world's most loved enterprise software company. So I want zero bullshit. So it's all about what customers want and putting it to the test and making them happy and creating value and making sure that software is consumed. I don't want shelfware. I don't want aggressive selling. So there's been a constant journey to Sprinklr is now 3,500 people. We got to make sure that everyone's living that like ethos of what Sprinklr is. And that's how we've built it. And that's how we continue to grow.
You landed some of the biggest names. How were you able to do that? Any challenges that you went through? Or did you just have a notion that I'm going to build this and then I'm going to sell it? Like, how did it come about? Because it doesn't happen sort of one-to-one, right?
Yeah, I believe that the biggest problems need to be front-loaded, and so you got to front-load the pain. And so we focused a lot on architecture. In fact, I could have grown much faster. We probably still can, But the point is, you got to do things right. We want to build Sprinklr, inside out. Product first, success, value creation next, delivery in sales, and then marketing. And I would argue that Sprinklr is still very under-marketed. So we have customers that pay us $10, $15 million, many of the best brands in the world. And that's okay, because, I'd love having the truth propel us forward. And as long as you keep it that simple, you can keep doing it. Now, the key is building a company to, our next milestone is getting to $1 billion of ARR. And as anybody who's done a startup knows, every year of growth brings a different set of problems. So it's not like, what did you learn or what did you solve? What you learn is to solve whatever problem that comes in. You learn how to figure out, you learn how to solve problems, and whatever scale that. And then every scale, just like a video game, the price of getting through one level is going to a more complex level. The price of getting through that is an even more complex, impossible layer. And that's how you scale a company.
The boss gets bigger and bigger as you get to the next stage. In those early stages, though, did you have sort of a go time frame? Like, what was the indication for you to say, you know what, when I hit this, to me, it's product market fit and we'll carry on? Did you have any such sort of stage gates?
No, I'm a guy who I think biologically, I don't know how to process when people say no. So we keep going. There's never a no. There's a not that way is how I hear when someone says no. So there were no stages. There were 2 or 3 big milestones, and people talk about pivoting. We never pivoted the company. It was an evolution. So the first one was understanding that we're not doing social publishing, but building social media management. The second was going from social media management to unified customer experience management, which is like an operating system for the edge of your brand. And the third was this idea that to get to our vision, we got to mainstream every one of our products. So how do we take our digital service, customer service, and kind of take it into the contact center world, to make a CCaaS platform product out of it. So those are the 3 sort of, I'd say, milestones for us. And other than that, it was just listening to customers always. I love to say that the vision that we have is the address we put in the GPS. But whether we make a left turn at this light or right turn, our customers tell us.
That's a great way to put it. The directions are given by the customer, and that's how every major successful company, every iconic brand is built. They're customer focused, they're customer guided. Fantastic. Now, in those days, though, you said first milestone, second milestone, third milestone. At which milestone did you go public, by the way?
After the second.
The second you went public.
Yeah, and we had scale, and we had, it was the right time and logically the right place for us to go public.
In that first milestone, though, going from 0 to tens of millions in revenue, what was some of the biggest challenges that founders could learn from, and how did you navigate those?
Just stay true to customers, stay true to your vision, find the biggest problem you can, and try to solve it elegantly. Do you know there are only 3 things you have to do to build a business of any scale? You want the biggest company to the smallest company. There are 3 things you got to do. The first one is you got to find a big problem or a small problem, a pain that customers have. And you've got to solve it elegantly better than anyone else. That's number 1. Number 2, you've got to take amazing good care of your customers. Do you have any guesses on what number 3 is? The third is that there is no third. I always say 3 so that you never forget there are only 2 things you have to do to build an amazing business. Find a problem, find the best solution, and then take care of your customers.
Fantastic. I like that. Now, en route to this journey, though, In the early days, how big was your team and how did you scale that team? Or rather, like going from 0 to 10 million and 10 to 100, who are the key people to bring on board to help navigate this level of scale?
Well, that's just got to do with how much money you have. So I funded Sprinklr myself originally for a couple of years. And in the beginning, it was just, we were just risking everything I had built to that point, which was super interesting. So I convinced my wife to come help me, as I've done with many of my previous startups. But it's whoever you can find in phase one. And then as you get traction and revenue and growth, you have to find people who are willing. In early stages, you have to find people who are willing to wear multiple hats. And then there's a point at which you have to shift from that to find specialists. You have to find people who respect process. And then you have to keep making those shifts every so often to get that right. And, I think as you go from, $1 million to 10 million to 50 to 100 to 250, 500, and the company changes and your need changes, and you have to bring the right people for the right scale.
At what point do you make the shift from generalist to specialist? Is it a certain revenue number? Is it a certain customer number? Is it a specific kind of process orientation you gear towards as a company of scale?
You will have a distinct moment where, as an entrepreneur, you've cracked the code on what to do. And then it's about doing that consistently over and over and over again. That's the point when you have to shift from people who know how to figure things out to people who can hire the army and teach the drills.
That's when you go from being a pirate to being a Navy. Now, You talked about fundraising, and you said you funded Sprinklr a lot in the early days. It probably helped you, keep as much equity in the company or not dilute yourself. But the markets are super rough right now. We went from being a unicorn being minted every other day to now valuations are a third or maybe a fifth of what they used to be. Any advice for founders looking to raise money in a tight market like this? Because you've seen several cycles of the market before.
Yeah. And somehow consistently I pick the worst times to start companies, But listen, I have a slightly contrarian view to fundraising. People celebrate fundraising and people ask, how do I raise money? I'm like, I don't know, build a great business. They come chasing you. So what I've learned early on is if you think your fundraising is an outcome, you're pitching the VCs, and you're one of 1,000 people who walk through their doors every day. What I've always done is just obsessed about my customers. And once you're successful working with great brands and solving great problems, all VCs that I know and investors that I know have teams of people scouting for successful companies. So you flip it and have them start pitching you. And so I learned it the hard way. And with Sprinklr, it was all about obsessing about customers and then finding partners who bought into the vision, who wanted to work with us. So I spent no energy raising money, I think. And I raised, for $300-400 million without doing PowerPoint presentations. And I would say to people that if you need a PowerPoint to understand how big the idea is, either my idea is not big enough or we're not good for each other. And so you find people who see the world the way you do, and then it's fun to work together.
Having been a multiple time founder, you probably, given the pedigree, probably knew a few people in the circle where like, hey, what is Ragy building? Let's go and poke there.
That's not true. Sadly, I found out that's completely not true, or I didn't know how to take advantage of it. Look, I've got a little bit of sort of Asian thing in me. I was more comfortable losing my money than somebody else's. I'm okay losing what I've made. I don't have to explain to anybody. But if I take $1 from you, like I want to treat it way more respectfully than I would do with my money. So it was just super intuitive for me to put what I have on the line first and not worry about it. It was not really to optimize the equity outcome in the end. It was just a way of what I love to do business personally.
So many founders don't realize this. I get hit up a lot by founders. Oh, I have an idea. What's the best way to go and raise the money so I can reduce my risk? I'm like, investors want to reduce their risk. So figure out how you can get it to a certain point with paying customers who are staying, not just paying on your means first. I think this also comes from our Asian culture or ethnic backgrounds. Is taking money from somebody is seen as a curse, and your parents, you're taking money from somebody else. I have never even taken money to buy a house. Right, that kind of thing. So that forces you to, I guess, live within your means and work within your means and stretch yourself. And when the hammer is on your head, then you probably work harder than you're using other people's money, or opium, as you call it, other people's money. Awesome. Going public. At what point you said, "Let's do this dance"? Right? Because going public is a significant milestone. And at a time where probably comparable revenues to others in your cohort who haven't yet gone public. So what was the decision-making process, and what are the key things to do when pursuing an IPO?
We did our first round of funding with a post-money valuation of $18 million. And what you do learn when you work with VCs and private equity folks is, they all have one cycle. So we knew we always need to give them a way to, find liquidity, employees a way to get liquidity for the ones who want it. So going public for us was just sort of the natural thing to do. And there was never a debate about it. It was just really, when is the best time to do it? And we were ready to go when COVID hit. And so then we paused, and after COVID, we went out again at sort of the earliest time we could. Look, I think you go public for a few reasons. You go public to raise money, and you can do it with private capital. You go public to raise awareness. So it's kind of a marketing thing, if you will, because there's a reason for people to talk about it. And you go public to raise credibility. So when you work with brands like ours, it's great that all our financials are public and people know that, we're complying with a lot of governmental regulations around the world. So that gives them a certain level of comfort in working with us if you're a bank or you're a regulated company yourself. So it made logical sense for us and was the right thing for us to do.
Definitely. Any key challenges you faced, or maybe one or two things that are absolutely necessary for others thinking, hey, I'm going to plan for an IPO now?
Well, understand the why of why you want to go public and be very clear. And, I think there are people who just perceive glamour in taking a company public. That's a good reason. I'm not sure that's a valid one, but you really have to understand the why and make sure that you fully understand the complexities and the overhead that comes with running a public company, everything from SOX to SOX compliance to audits and all the other things that come. It's just a lot of work. And you have an entirely new set of stakeholders that are going to take up a lot of your energy and time, rightfully so.
Some unconventional advice that founders typically ignore but shouldn't.
The one thing I've learned over and over again is to stick to first principles, stick to the basics. What I've learned at every turn of my maturation, which continues, is when you hear, it doesn't matter whether someone else has 20 years experience and done it 50 times, when you hear someone tell you that's how it's done, and you can't find a first principles reason to buy it, the argument, say no. And what I'm learning every year is to trust that voice inside me more. And every year I'm blessed with amazing mentors, people like John Chambers, who's just taught me so many things, and Aaron, the founder of the CEO of UKG, or Kevin Haverty, who's the CRO of ServiceNow, just retired. But what you learn is you learn from everyone. But ultimately, you need to know that you have to have your synthesis, your decision come from within you. And everybody else is helping validate it, invalidate it, give you more options.
It's ultimately, I love the focus on first principles, because a lot of people, they do things by analogy. It's, let's try this growth thing because it's a trend today, or let's do this other thing. But if you focus on first principles, customer pain point, where do they hang out? How do I get them? It's a very calm conversation.
Yeah, how do I create value?
Exactly. And keep creating that value. Now, Sprinklr just announced Q1 results on June 5th. Looking ahead, what are key areas of focus and growth opportunities you see?
Right now, our number one priority is the contact center market. It's contact center as a service. That's a 40, 50-year-old marketplace that's just coming apart, if you ask me. And with conversational AI, with the things we can do, it's completely up for disruption. And that market is a $800 billion market. And traditionally, technology was disrupting only a fraction of it. That only a very tiny single-digit percentage of that 800 billion goes on technology. The rest is on manpower. With AI, there's a lot more of that pie in play. And so we're very, very focused on that. And that's really kind of, we're able to disrupt that market with AI in a way that others can't, and with this omni-channel approach. And so that's a priority for the company.
The biggest outcomes on the planet are founder-led. Sprinklr, Shopify, Airbnb, you name it. But you're not a first-time entrepreneur. You've done this over and over again. And it's very hard, right? It's not an easy journey from funding things out of your pocket to seeing it flourish. There's several personal and professional things you go through. What are some things you do to stay in peak mental and physical performance?
I've learned over the years from reading and mentors and amazing people. So it's mind, body, spirit. You got to make sure that you're taking care of your body, which admittedly I am not doing as good a job as I'd like to do. But for me, the most non-obvious thing is the mental plane. And this is what a lot of people don't deal with very well. And so I'm a big fan of meditation, and I've been a student of learning about the mind for 20 some years. And I think that's something that's made a big difference for me. And I have a whole framework, details of which that I won't go into. But then I'm a deeply spiritual person. I believe that there's power in the universe that you've got to align with, and you have to quieten your mind to be able to listen to that voice. So that's how I think of things. I think learning to understand the mind, and you can call it manage stress or whatever, learning to understand the mind and being able to control your instincts and body, being able to harness your mind, and then being able to connect to whatever the spirit is, in whatever way you call it, God, as any way you refer to it, is what keeps me going. I feed all three levels. And so for me, I'd say is meditation. And that's really, and there's different types of meditation. Meditation, whatever you do to not get lost in the past or future, is meditation, staying in the present. So you can do that by, there's a category of meditation that's breathing focused. And there's another category that's just the absence of thought or focusing on something and just letting it. So which is kind of up and down, both allow you to escape the mental plane. So I try to do both of these multiple times a week. And that's just really the essential thing for me. If I don't meditate, it's like, I feel like I haven't, the way you feel if you don't take a shower.
You can't go without doing that for too long, but whatever puts you in a positive frame of mind manifests itself in how you take care of the business, your family, and everything else. This was fantastic, Ragy. Where can we follow you?
Well, I'm on Twitter. I'm on most social networks with just my name at Ragy Thomas. And it's not hard to find me.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your time, and wishing you another few zeros to your market cap there. Have a great rest of the week. Thank you.
We're only getting started. The best is yet to come.
The best is always yet to come. That's the great way to look at it. And thanks for leaving us with that.
Take care. Good to talk to you.
I need some traction.